three-way adjustable rear stabilizer bar for Tahiti. It's basically going to be a ZL1 1LE. I have a ZL1 1LE. All right, so today's video, we are gonna wrap up Tahiti suspension upgrades with a set of Hellwig stabilizer bars. Now, up until this point, I think I pretty much touched everything I wanted to on the suspension. We replaced all the components, lower control arms, all the bushings in the back, all the bushings in the front, everything has been replaced. There is not one 240,000 mile bushing left on this truck, with the exception of the body bushings. They're in great shape. They're still nice and soft. They're not cracked, so I didn't touch them. I have absolutely no intention of installing poly mounts or anything like that. So yeah, with the exception of the body bushings, everything else has been replaced. Now, as you know, we also went ahead and installed some coilovers. We brought the front up about 2.5 inches to level it out. And then I finished that up with some tubular upper control arms with the corrected ball joint angle from Freedom Off-Road, and then installed these nice BF Goodrich 305 65/18 tires. But with that being said, that brings us to today's mod. So what I have here is a pair of Hellwig beefed up stabilizer bars, front and rear. So when I say beefed up, these things are completely solid. They're chromoly, they're not hollow like the sway bars that are on this thing right now, and they are slightly larger in diameter. They do come with polyurethane bushings, so stabilizer bar bushings and end links. And yeah, by doing this, that's pretty much gonna wrap up the kind of handling, suspension, performance stuff I wanna do. And then we're gonna be moving on to the brakes and then the body work. But before we get to installing these, I'm sure at least a few of you are wondering, hey, I installed these coilovers not too long ago. I was super happy with the way they increased the, the performance, the ride quality. As far as handling went, why am I bothering to install these stabilizer bars? Now, obviously, I can just go under here, crank all the dampening settings up to 11, have it ride super firm, have it ride essentially on rails, get rid of all the body roll, which I tried when I installed those coilovers, and I was very happy with the way it firmed everything up. However, I said I'm building this thing as kind of like a factory spec, as if they built like a Z71 SS or something of that nature back in 2004. And as tempting and easy as it is to just crank all the settings up and deal with the kind of bouncy, hard ride all the time, that's not something that would have came from the factory that way. There would be some kind of adjustment, or it would be fine-tuned in a way where it's still kind of comfortable on the street and can still perform in such a way where there's not a bunch of body roll. So by going to these stabilizer bars, that is going to allow us to eliminate a lot of that body roll by stiffening everything up. But at the same time, I'm going to be able to keep the dampening settings on all the coilovers on the low end where I want them. So, driving on the street normally, it's still going to it's going to be soft. It's going to soak up a lot of those bumps. But when I do get into it and take turns, these babies should, stiffen it up quite a bit and allow, a lot of that body roll to be eliminated. All right, so with the front and rear stabilizer bars removed, we are ready to install the new guys. Now, before we do that, I just have a caliper here. I'm gonna give you guys a little idea on the size difference. Now, it's not huge, but the new ones are a little bit larger. So the old rear one here, we're looking at 28 millimeters. The new rear one is 31.3 millimeters. Hopping over to the front, old one, it's 32 millimeters. So the new rear one is just about the same diameter of the old front one. And then the new front one goes from 32 up to 35 and a quarter. I am very surprised with how light these things actually are. You see a big SUV like this, you'd think these things would be pretty, you know, beefy and heavy, but they're just, you know, hollow tubes. It's basically what they are, front and rear. The new ones, a hell of a lot heavier. So I think we're gonna start with the fronts. It's probably the easier of the two to install. And before I throw you guys into montage mode, here's, you know, a close-up of everything they include. So we got the front and rear poly stabilizer bar bushings. We have poly front end links, and then the rear ones also use these poly bushings in the end links. And according to the instructions, we want to adjust those in a way where the back sway bar is going to be level with the frame, and then from there we can choose what hole we want to use, because the back one is three-way adjustable, so the outermost hole is going to be the softest setting, and then from there, as you kind of work your way towards the inside, that's going to stiffen up the rear stabilizer bar more and more. All right, so front and rear is done. I got the adjustment nuts tightened down. Everything's torqued. These end links in the instructions said to torque them between 50 to 60 foot-pounds, so I set them all at 55. For the adjustment itself, for this sleeve, you just want to set it so the bar is going to be parallel with the frame, so as you know, as level as possible with the frame. So I did that. Yeah, everything's torqued down. Install went pretty smoothly, with the exception of these brackets. The front wasn't a problem, but this one in particular, maybe I just got a bad cut or whatever. They drilled the hole way too close to the inside of the bend, so it was very difficult to get that last bolt in, and I ended up kind of just using just brute force with the impact gun and a socket on it to kind of bend it over, and then I got it in far enough, finished it off with a ratchet, and once it got, you know, down far enough, it kind of made its own path and bent the bracket enough to get where it needed to be. But just something to keep in mind. The brackets don't seem to be too high a quality, and the other thing is with these links, I noticed they have quite a bit of rust, kind of before I pressed the bushing in, like the paint was flaked off and they were rusting inside where the bushing sits. I don't know if they just didn't paint those from the factory and they were sitting and they rusted, but for the price of this kit, front and rear, I think I paid $700 or $800 for everything. It's a lot of money. You'd think, you know, they'd at least powder coat this stuff instead of what seems to be just like spray paint. But as you can see, I have them on the middle hole. The instructions say to start on the softest setting and kind of work your way up. I'm just going to start dead in the middle. It's probably where I'm going to end up leaving it. All right, so I'm just about to get on the highway. First time with the new stabilizer bars, and I got to say, just driving it on the street, I didn't think I was going to see much of a difference in low speed. I tried to push it a little bit, and small things, just like getting into a driveway, I noticed it doesn't rock back and forth nearly as much as it did before. And driving on the street, it doesn't feel like it firmed it up too much. You know, obviously going to a bigger sway bar, it's going to keep the suspension from moving as much. So even in just, you know, straight line driving, it's going to stiffen it up a little bit, but I really don't notice anything too much. And I do want to mention, in case nobody realizes it, this doesn't drive like a stock Tahoe, like ride quality at all. It's nowhere near as squishy and soft. Just want to put that out there because I know I'm saying I leave the shocks on soft and I'm trying to maintain the stock ride quality. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it as soft as possible and, you know, as comfortable for daily driving, but once the tires went on, basically that went out the window. Like if I still had the torsion keys in here with those torsion bars cranked up all the way, the ride would be much harsher. And I did get this thing aligned, so everything's within spec. There was just enough adjustment in the camber. I thought I was going to run out of room to get it in the green, so I didn't have to get offset control arm bushings or anything. All right, yeah. It's definitely way flatter when you really start to push it. But yeah, pushing it through the turn when you got all that weight kind of leaning to one side, it definitely keeps it more stable. And I am going to continue to drive this. I'm kind of short on time. I'd like to give it like a really, usually I'll kind of drive it for a few days at least and then really give you my input on it. I think there's actually a T-Rex behind me right now, and he has a black ass windshield. That thing is like 5% tint. Unfortunately, we are nowhere near T-Rex power, so I will not be challenging him on the on-ramp. The whole point of these mods is to basically give me a little bit of a cushion, a little more space, because obviously this thing isn't meant to handle, or if I was trying to really make it handle, I would be lowering it and putting bigger rims on it, you know, not putting a big squishy AT tire on it and all that. But I'm trying to make it be able to handle the power a little bit more when we get to that point, so I have more of a cushion. So if I do get ahead of myself in a curve or something, I'll have more space or less of a chance of rolling into a ditch, which is a good reason to do, you know, suspension and brake upgrades before you add power. But for me, most of the time they're cheaper, and there's so much stuff you could do to suspension. You could just do little things at a time, sway bar, springs, you know, lowering springs, shocks. It just makes sense to kind of do that. You can, you know, have fun doing the work, see the improvements, and then when it comes time to do that power, you'll already have addressed the entire suspension. You're going to have a much greater chance of survival. This thing feels great. And you know, I had the tires at 35. I had them at 40, 42, I think. I lowered them down just to try to save the ride a little bit. But as always, I'm going to, you know, continue driving this. I'm going to give you guys an update on how I like them, after driving it for another few weeks. Next thing we're going to do on this is going to be the brake upgrade. However, it's not going to be the next video coming out. Next video is going to be a Trans Am video. We're going to get that transmission mounted up, figure out the torque on, figure out the drive shaft. Because once that transmission is in there and I know where it's sitting, then I can go and do the fuel system and hopefully get that thing running relatively soon, because I know I'm dragging ass on that. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to link these down below if you are interested in them, front and rear sway bars. I do have the receipts here. The front kit was $275. The rear kit was $385. So you are looking at just under $700 if you do want to do this upgrade. In my honest opinion, if you're just looking for adjustability and if you want it add power to this and take it to the track, drag race, or do whatever, I'd have to recommend, if you can only choose one thing, the coilovers over the stabilizer bars, just because you have so much more adjustability. You're not only getting the lift out of it or the level out of it, or the drop, depending on where you want to go with it, you're also getting those double adjustable shocks. You can really dial the ride in, and just performance-wise, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck with the coilovers than dropping like $700 on stabilizer bars. But for now, that's going to do it for this one, guys. I will see you in a few days.